Yeah. I'm ready right now.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Bailey with the MPC. About to get started. I'll give everyone to about 3:03, 3:04 to sign in for all those who will kind of struggle in late. At about 3:04, which is about 2 minutes, I'll kick it off to Mr. Clark, and then we can do some introductions after that. So I'll let you know, Mr. Clark, when you can get started. All right, Mr. Clark, it is 3:04, which is the designated time that I gave everyone to kind of sign in. So if you want to go ahead and welcome everybody, and then you can turn it back over to me for introductions.
Thank you so much, Adam. I just wanted to stop by just briefly and share with all of the persons involved in this process again how much we thoroughly appreciate your involvement. I'm confident I get reports on a weekly basis, and after each one of these meetings, I'm very confident that we're going to have an ordinance that's going to truly meet the needs of the citizens of the city of Shreveport. It's going to be fair and equitable, and it's going to be a model ordinance. And I'm really excited about getting to the point where we make the presentation to the MPC board and ultimately to the city council. So not taking up a whole lot of your time, I just wanted to thank you again for your involvement in this process. We thoroughly appreciate every effort you make, and I look forward to seeing you at the final, at the finish line, excuse me, at the finish line once we are through with this project. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. For all those who don't know, that was Mr. Clark, Executive Director of the MPC. My name is Adam Bailey. I am the Community Planning and Design Manager for the NPC. It's the Community Planning Division that oversees the code text amendments, and we've been tasked with doing the research, getting the word out on what this possible ordinance will be. If I could, everyone who's on, it looks like there's quite a bit of people on, 14 of you. If you could just say your name if you're with an organization or if you're just private citizen, just listening in. And then after that, I'm going to turn it over to Miriam for a quick presentation on what we've done, where we're at, where we're going, and then we're going to open it up for some public comments. So introductions, please.
I'll start first. Lisa Brutto, Logan Mansion.
Wendy Ben Scotter, Shreveport Common.
Daniel Besnice, Bossier MPC.
Stacy Brown, Shreveport Bossier Convention and Tourist Bureau.
Sarah Scott, Historic Highland.
Robert Terry, City of Shreveport Revenue.
Madison Poche with the Highland Restoration Association.
James Stromberg, the Shreveport MPC.
James Brown with my wife Heidi Brown. She manages some properties in the Highland area.
I think that's everybody. If Miriam, if you want to introduce yourself and go ahead and give your presentation.
Sure. Good afternoon to everybody. This is Mariam, and I'm the planner, the community planner in MPC, and I'm assigned to work on this ordinance. So to starting, just for review, in two previous Zoom meetings, we have covered this subject. Choose short-term rental as a recommended title. The proposal is to regulate the short-term based on the current nature of the business. And the objective are to establish enforceable regulations, preserve the identity of the neighborhoods, and increase the economy opportunity. In this meeting, we focus on drafting the short-term rental regulation. To start, we put this item in the Article 23, and it has a 12 subject to address. The two first items we have discussed before. MPC has recommendation for the 6 next subject in this presentation, and the last 3 will be discussed next Zoom meeting. For this project, we had a case study, conducted a study on the recommended cities, including Denver, Richmond, Des Moines, Spokane, Torrance. And we go through the definition for each cities, and also based on regulation of type, requirement, application fee, location, who can operate, and what it's not allowed. We find some regulation that we starting have a draft part 1. For starting with the definition, MPC recommendation is define the short-term rental as a rental of the whole or portion of any dwelling or accessory structure for temporary period of the time up to 30 following days per guest within 90 days period. And also we've categorized the short-term rental in 2 types, type 1 and type 2. Type 1, it's rent for portion of the dwelling or accessory dwelling unit, and type 2, it's entire dwelling units. The difference is the entire dwelling units have all the option for requirement as type 1, that it include short-term certificate of occupancy and property taxes and lodging taxes, and plus obtains short-term rental license. And both of type 1 and 2 permitted by right in all residential zone properties. But type B, there is another sub type that we mention as a type 2B, and is permitted by special exception. If more than one unit they want to rent, if a short-term rental is not in a residential zone properties, if short-term rental is occupied by tenant or HOA, if short-term rental holds a commercial meeting, party, and different events. So we designed the application process for both two types. Type 1 started with applying for short-term rental certificate of occupancy through MPC department, and then obtained the short-term certificate of occupancy from zoning permit MPC department. And after that, they could be able to operate the short-term rental. In type 2, we have two categories. Type 2A, permitted by right, and they started with the MPC department to apply for short-term certificate of occupancy, and then obtain the certificate of occupancy through the zoning and permit center MPC department. And for this type, they need to obtain short-term rental license as well. And for that, they need to sign to register for sales tax account. And after go through all this process, they can operate a short-term rental. For type B, the difference is they need go through the zoning board of appeals, ZBA, in the hearing, in a public hearing. And the rest of the process is the same as type 2A. To start, the applicant should provide some data and information, which included owner information, operator information, unit information, license number, the number of bedrooms in the proposed home share, the maximized number of the visitors per night, and also mention the platform that they advertise. For fee and taxes, the type 1 requires $75 for certificate of occupancy application fee. Type 2, it costs $150, and it's plus the short-term rental license fee that we need to kind of find that through the Department of Revenue. The tax type 1 only need to, it's a recommended to pay property tax and lodging tax. Type 2 shall require to pay property tax and lodging tax plus sales tax. And we have a timeline for this proposed project that right now we are in the meeting, in the third meeting. After this meeting, we need you to send your recommendation regarding to release report in 2 weeks, so we could revise the draft based on your feedback and resend it for review. And I will send a timeline with the following email. And for the next meeting, we draft part 2, release part 2 to review. And we have the meeting on Wednesday, June 9. And now we are more than happy to answer any question or concern and listen to your talk.
Thanks, Miriam. If anybody wants to open it up with any type of comments, discussion items, criticism, a couple of things, but before we get started, remember this isn't necessarily what will go into the ordinance. It's just based on the research. This is a starting point. So anything is open for debate, comment, to moving forward.
Okay, I do have some questions. This is Sarah Scott. I live in Highland, and I do have some Airbnbs. On the type 1, is this correct that is basically where a homeowner is renting out rooms only? Is that correct assumption?
So the type 1 would be a portion of a dwelling. So if you had a home and you just wanted to rent out a bedroom for it, or if you had a garage apartment or other type of accessory dwelling unit behind your home, that's what type 1 would be.
Okay, and therefore the type 2 would be everything else, which would be freestanding, not attached to your home.
Well, right. So if you had a home in Highland and then you had another home in South Highland or in Fairfield, and you wanted to rent out that second dwelling unit, meaning that completely different property away from your property, that's what type 2 would be.
Okay, and then for those type 2s, that $150 fee, that would be for each unit that you rent out, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then I see the occupancy, you have to have a certificate of occupancy. You didn't mention that there would be any fees associated with that.
So essentially that would be the fee, that the ultimate thing that you would have to get would be a certificate of occupancy for a short-term rental. So if it was the type 1, that certificate of occupancy would be $75, which is exactly the same as a home-based business currently is. The type 2 would be $150.
Okay. My next question has to do with where we start, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals. Am I correct in assuming that if we were to go through this process, and it would have to go through an appeals process as literally the process, does that require a notice of signage around the neighborhood that we are applying for this variance, so to speak?
Yes, it would be a special exception. And any time that something goes in front of the ZBA for a public hearing, notice is required. So yes, a sign would go out in front of the property saying that a ZBA meeting will be held on such and such date at such and such time.
Okay, I think for now I'm clear on the rest. Thank you.
And it hasn't been completely hatched out. Not everything in type 2 would require a special exception. Just right now, what's on the table is what's listed under B, or the T2B, type 2B.
Okay, as I recall though that you guys changed it so that Airbnbs would have to go through the appeals board, right?
So, well, currently right now, if you were to try, well, as the ordinance is written right now, the UDC, all transient vacation rentals require a special exception approval through the ZBA. However, when we changed that over, because it used to be a special use permit, under one of the use standards, it says that it has to be, through the director of finance. Well, first of all, the director of finance doesn't exist anymore. That position was absolved, and I think it became the CFO. And then also there is no pathway through the director of finance. If you were to contact someone in revenue, they would say, well, hey, this doesn't exist. And because of that kind of started this process. So yes, currently right now, everything would require a special exception, but because we noticed those flaws, we're not requiring that right now. We're going to try to plug the hole, and then moving forward, we feel that most of these need to be a permitted use by right, and then only some, if they meet certain triggers, would require a special exception.
Okay, and while you were speaking, I thought of one other thing. On the property taxes, I'm not sure I'm clear on that, because we're paying property taxes on the buildings or dwellings. So you're going to charge additional property taxes, or just the lodging taxes and the sales tax?
Miriam, you might want to address that.
Yes, I mentioned the property tax because sometimes it's confusing. People, when they just pay the tax, lodging tax, they think it's included the property tax as well. So we kind of want to mention you need to pay both taxes.
So you can't be in arrears with your property taxes?
No, it's property tax, you pay it, and plus lodging tax. Because we had some kind of applicant confusing when they pay the lodging tax, they don't need to pay the property tax anymore.
Okay, it's just discernment. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And to speak towards that from Robert Terry from Revenue Compliance, that's in line with our current practice. As a municipality, we're not allowed to assess any property or occupational tax higher than what the state allows us. So, there wouldn't be any additional. But when it comes to, let's use food trucks for an example, MPC does a lot of legwork when getting food trucks up and running, and those proprietors have to be compliant, which means up to date on property tax and their occupational license tax before they're given their permit. So it's in line with current practice. I believe Miriam was just making sure that everyone knew that, essentially all your bills have to be paid in order to be eligible.
Okay, thank you for that.
It's Lisa with the Logan Mansion. So right now, everything that we do goes through Airbnb, and they charge a occupancy fee that goes somewhere in the state of Louisiana. So am I to understand this correctly, that if I have somebody book at the Logan Mansion, I then need to pay an occupancy tax and a lodging tax? And if so, what are those? What is the percentage for those? And then how do I add that on to a guest booking?
Adam, do you want me to answer or you answer?
Yes, please.
Okay, the occupancy tax is the same as lodging tax. There is no difference. It's
So
the two ways we explain.
Okay, so it's currently being collected by Airbnb. So are you saying that I don't have to worry about that?
No.
Right, you want to answer?
Yeah, Lisa, for some clarity there, we all know Louisiana is a wonderful place when it comes to how things are titled and labeled. So the occupancy tax you pay through Airbnb is a requirement by the state. And Airbnb has things set up for that to be collected and go to the state. The lodging tax that Miriam has here is referencing the type of occupational business this is for your occupational license tax. So essentially your business license tax is what the lodging tax is referring to. So the lodging, it's essentially saying that this is the type of business you're classified as. So for your occupational license tax or business tax, you'll be paying that lodging tax. So the occupancy that you pay via Airbnb is your occupancy fee. The lodging tax is your business tax. And then of course you have your property tax. And then the certificate of occupancy is part of our workflow for establishing a business. That's, you know, when the fire department comes out and inspects and does those things. So even though they all have the word occupancy or occupational in them, they're separate things.
Can
If
I?
I could, this is Stacy.
Is,
that-
so is that a one-time fee, or is that a fee being assessed every time a guest stays? I'm a little confused.
Okay, can I ask Terry one thing from you? When you mention the logging tax is the sale tax, what that means? It means when I'm saying the lodging tax, it's selling tax for the business. You kind of say that. I want just clear that.
So, and I'm not speaking towards sales and use tax. I was speaking towards the occupational license tax. So, and Lisa, if this helps clarify, when you do your, so every December, January, when you for your business, when you get your renewal form for occupational license tax, and you fill in the form to determine what your amount due for the year is. Mail it, then you get the colorful occupational license permit or you know, mailed back to you from the city. That's what we're referencing. So you'll do that once a year. It'll be due by February 28th or 29th in a leap year each year, and you'll pay that once a year.
So it's a fee. It's essentially a fee that's being called a tax.
No, it's a tax. For instance, you currently run a business, correct?
Right.
And you know your occupational license tax that you pay to the city each year.
No.
That may mean you have not been compliant with your occupation.
Well, exactly. But there, yes.
So that is a state requirement.
Okay.
For any business that's in operation. It's sort of synonymous with your business license.
Yeah, I thought since I was going through Airbnb, I was okay. So I'll get that resolved.
Yeah, so the way Airbnb works, it's kind of similar to like, you know, Lyft or Uber. You know, even though you work with them, you're your own business, essentially like a contractor. So as your own business, you have to follow those requirements and compliance requirements as a business in your area.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
and
I, you know, I totally understand that, but I also think one of the reasons we're having these conversations is because it was definitely a very gray area. So I would expect there are a lot of people like me who might offer rooms Airbnb that are not familiar with that. So I apologize if I've been negligent in that area, but I will certainly get it resolved very quickly so I can be compliant.
And Lisa, if you read the note that Stacy Brown put in the text, you can find it's. She kind of mentioned the occupancy tax. It's collected with the state, and the local occupancy tax. It's not currently being collected. So maybe after this, there was a tax as a local occupancy. And she mentioned it is 6%.
Okay, so there's going to be a 6% occupancy tax. There's going to be a sales tax. And what is that based on? Like what percentage?
Yeah, sales tax is for the short-term rental that rent the entire home, not portion of home.
Okay, understand. Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey guys, I just want to, I'm not sure why my video is not working. I want to make sure that I'm understanding this so that I can explain it to other people in the future.
Thank you.
So from the perspective of a consumer, when I go to book a room on Airbnb, when I'm traveling, it's really common to see a cleaning fee, a tax, and something added on for whatever city we're going to be in. So is that what we're talking about here mostly, that the Airbnb owner is going to be able to collect that tax through the website from the guest? And then what would be the mechanism of having, do they need to just pay that in bulk at the end of the year? I'm not sure. Can you explain kind of the process of collection to me?
Sure. Terry, you want to answer or you want me to answer? Or Adam? Hello?
You can go ahead, Miriam, or if Terry has.
Okay.
anything to add
Yeah,
to it.
because but we haven't got to that point yet. We talked to the Airbnb with two of the public advisor from the Airbnb. We not get to that point to see we could collaboration with them to collect the tax, and then they return the city share. So I don't know, Terry, do you have more information, or you have contacted with the Airbnb to see they work with us in this process or not?
Not any further than what you just described, Miriam, but just to speak to that with context of what we have established with other, national organizations like this, Lyft being one, Uber, I can't remember the name of the scooter people, but essentially for those fees that are collected through the platform, the city, works with that software vendor or whoever, and they can then remit them directly to us. Lyft and Uber do it on different schedules. One is like monthly, the other is quarterly, so on and so forth. Don't quote me on those, but that's something that us here at the city would work with Airbnb so that there would be no issue with those fees that you're assessing to your guests are being paid to the city.
So now I need to thank Stacy Brown. She has a cold active here. She just mentioned in the note that the Caddo and Browser tax officer are currently working in Airbnb and where to collect the tax. So I think it's the possibility for us to do the same too.
So the Caddo and Bossier tax offices would work directly with Airbnb and VRBO.
Thank you.
And I guess just to throw in revenue, we deal with this a lot of people. So Lisa, everyone else, do not feel bad that you're confused, because we literally have a team of people whose job it is to clear this up for people every day. When you're operating a business, you have, of course, you have to get started with your certificate of occupancy. And this is just speaking at the local level. You have your certificate of occupancy, then, of course, you're a business with a business location. So you have to be current on your property tax, and then you have to register to pay your occupational license tax, and then you have sales and use tax, which Stacy and the Caddo and Bossier office over there, and then for a business like this, you also have the occupancy tax. So it's we're not adding any taxes or fees. What we're doing is making sure that, as Adam and Miriam were saying earlier, we're plugging in all of the holes with this specific process to make sure everyone knows what to do to stay compliant.
Hey, Robert, I got a question for you. This is Jake Brown. I know that when Louisiana wanted to collect the Airbnb tax, they had to change their tax code because currently the way it was written, it didn't catch short-term rentals as a lodge. So my question is has Shreveport updated their tax code? Because right now, I'm pretty sure they haven't, and I'm pretty sure Airbnbs wouldn't be categorized as a lodge.
So yeah, so the state occupational license tax guide or tax code is what the city and the parish follow. So when it comes to occupational license tax, that's done at a state level. So let's say the city of Shreveport wanted to make a change to occupational license tax. We couldn't just make that change. We would have to lobby state legislature and go through all of that for the state to make the change. And then we would follow along with what the state changed. So when the state made that change, it applies to occupational license tax law, and the city of Shreveport follows along with that.
Okay, but what about the other taxes, the sales tax?
And James, you may be referring to the occupancy tax, the hotel occupancy tax, basically. And that definition of a hotel was changed by the state several years ago, and that's when they started collecting the state tax. And then it was updated for, we thought it was for everyone, but then they said, no, that was just the state. So that was actually updated in the state legislature last year.
Okay.
It just, people haven't been collecting it at this point.
I have a few other questions I'm going to run through that I've been writing down. So my first one was about regulating the number of guests per night. Is this kind of extending a rule that's already on the books for hotels or residencies? Are you guys limiting that? Or is that just to kind of have on the application so that you know, kind of what is being promoted?
I think it will be, as part of the use standards. That's typically how all the other cities do it. When we research those in like Denver and Spokane, depending on the type, was also the number of guests that could stay. For example, I think Spokane, and I don't have the report right here in front of me, but I think on like their type 1, it was limited to, 8 guests, whereas in type 2, because of a larger drilling unit, was like 12 or something like that. So it would be dependent on the type. And now we haven't fleshed all that out yet. That's still what we're talking about. So we're up to you all to say, oh, hey, I think there should be regulations on it, or there shouldn't be, or et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you for explaining that. And then also for the type 2B, getting a special exception if you're more than 1 unit. If a home is, let's say, already a legal duplex, and someone wanted to rent it out as 2 different Airbnbs, right? 2 units, but on a multifamily home, would that then be a special exception? Even, does that make sense?
And do you want me to answer, Adam?
Yes.
Okay, the duplex, it's type of the house. It's only, we kind of consider as a 1 unit. It doesn't mean it's 2 units. Do you understand what I mean? You don't need to get 2 times special use for that.
Perfect. So if someone had a single family, they were trying to turn into, let's say, 2 Airbnbs, that would need a special use. But if it was already a duplex and they want to have 2 Airbnb spots on there, it would not be a special exception. Is that right?
It means if they have a different access, it's considered as a 2 units, 2 dwelling units. But if it has a one access, it's just considered as a one dwelling unit.
Got it. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, I have one last question, then we'll stop. I suspect there may be people who, pop open an Airbnb room without fully knowing about it and need some kind of retroactive update, or they make a mistake. Are there going to be a way, is there going to be a way that someone can kind of go through the process backwards, or get a notice from Airbnb that they need to go register with you guys?
Like someone like me, right?
I
Miriam,
think
do
you're
you
a
want
few
to?
steps ahead.
Okay,
of
I
folks
didn't
that
get exactly what's the point.
So
Can you repeat it again? Sorry.
Yeah, I suspect even after these rules go into effect, there may be people who aren't aware of what they're supposed to do. So if it was a special occasion, I could just go onto Airbnb and put, an extra bedroom up for someone to come use, right? And so I was wondering, I don't even know. I guess this is just how all businesses work, right? Like if they do that, are they going to be penalized, or is there a way to have Airbnb send them a notice that they need to register? Is there a way to communicate with kind of a wider audience than the highly engaged business owners that are on here already?
So, right now, because we don't have kind of a contribution with the Airbnb, I cannot answer your question right now, but the part that I can answer is you need to start, if you want to run a business, you should start with the MPC. So it doesn't mean Airbnb, it's kind of back to us and give the list of the current kind of owner that they rent the entire house, or just portion of the house. Did I answer your question?
Hey, Miriam, let me just kind of elaborate on
Sure.
that real quick. You answered partially, and I'll hopefully make it a little clearer for Madison. So in our research and talking with a city like New Orleans, New Orleans has a very close relationship with Airbnb. From the planning perspective, when we talk to their planner, they have some type of mechanism, and I don't 100% know what it is, but if their planning department through their enforcement finds that someone is on Airbnb but not registered, they have the ability to contact Airbnb. And yes, Airbnb has the ability to either contact that host or shut it down until they become compliant. Now, I'm not saying we would go to that system. I don't 100% understand it, but I remember New Orleans talking about that. So that there is some type of mechanism out there that could be, rolled out, that if someone isn't in compliance, at least Airbnb has the ability to stop it.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess Airbnb's probably run into this issue, in some cities too. Thank y'all.
This is Sarah Scott again. I think for me, I live in a house that is next to a fourplex that was built in 1932 as a fourplex. And it has been a rental property there since 1938. The owner, I am a minority owner and there's a majority owner. I'm a minority owner so I can manage that property and stay within the state statutes. The certificate of occupancy is what is new to me. And I'm just going to go out there, come arrest me, do whatever it is you need to do. But how do we, you're renting property and you don't need it, and then you go to Airbnb and you do need it. Can you, as I said prior, when we first started doing Airbnb, I searched your websites for anything that would give me some guidance as to how to apply for Airbnb, and the term cannot be found on there. So at this point, knowing that, what do I personally need to handle today to continue to be in compliance with the city and the state?
Well, when it comes to Airbnb today, that you have no avenue, just because of all those holes, and we can't just snap our fingers and say, oh, go apply for special exception use that would make you compliant, because once you got to the revenue level, they don't have anything. The idea is that through this process, and unfortunately, we're not trying to kick the can down the road on purpose, but we are trying to get it right. So come June or July, whenever this goes in front of the MPC and City Council and gets approved, that on day one, you'll be able to become fully compliant, because you'll be able to check all the boxes that, yes, you have a fourplex and this is the process, or, oh, I have an additional bedroom in, my home in South Highlands, this is the process. We're not enforcing the special exception today, as we weren't last month or the month before that. We're not enforcing it. Therefore, you're not going to be cited for not having a certificate of occupancy or having a special exception use.
Okay.
Mr. Clark is aware of that. The zoning administrator is aware of that. Revenue is aware of that. So all of this is just on hold, because the pathway that currently exists right now will just send you in a do loop. It'll be a dead end. You'll just fall through the cracks.
Okay, this is much appreciated to hear this. So let me just also give you a synopsis. Right now, everyone that's operating an Airbnb within the city of Shreveport can continue to do so without some fear of fine or reprisal or anything like that. But once these guidelines are in place and we're given the pathway to become legal and current, that is when we will begin to get our short-term rental certificate of occupancy and get all of these pieces in place so that we're all good, correct?
Correct. And the ordinance will address what to do if you've been operating, within the past 6 months or 6 years. I know Jake, I think he said that he's been doing it for years and years. Some people who are on might have been only doing it for a year or two. And between now and July, new people might pop up and start doing it. We will address how those are, quote, grandfathered in, and what they have to do in order to become compliant.
Okay, so much appreciated to hear that.
And Madison's asking, will there be something like a 30-day or 90-day window to become compliant? It might be something like that, Madison. It could be just that everyone, because you've been operating, you won't have to get a special exception. You won't have to, you'll just be permitted, and you just might have to get your certificate of occupancy. I can't answer that right now, but it will be addressed. Miriam, if you want to show up the slide that shows all the different subsections of the article.
So while she's doing that, I do have a question, and this gets back to the sales tax.
So right there, real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off, but 2311 existing short-term rentals, that's where it will discuss the grandfathering in and the non-conforming and the conformities and all that. Hasn't been written yet. We'll be doing that over the next 4 to 6 weeks, but it will be addressed, Madison. Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's quite all right. So if I have people staying at the mansion again, am I supposed to be collecting sales tax right now?
That's a Terry question. Or Robert, sorry.
Sales tax, that would actually be a Stacy question.
Stacy.
Because I don't want to go into arrears. And there was the question, raised, as far as getting into the time period of compliance. So I certainly don't want to move forward without complying with whatever taxation is going to be in place. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to collect it, but I certainly want to put that amount in reserve or increase the price of the stay, for the rooms I have available.
Well,
Lisa, I think the best person to talk to would be Gail at the Caddo tax office. And I can get you her information.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
And to speak to that from an occupational license tax, which is separate from sales tax, but the same context in which you're asking, Lisa. As Adam mentioned before, there'll be some language that specifies this is where existing short-term rentals fall. So as Adam and Miriam are working through all of that, they would get with us in revenue to determine what language needs to be in here in that same vein for occupational license tax. And yeah, so whatever guidelines are put there, whether it's, hey, if you've been operating a year, when your renewal form comes out for the year, make sure you include that year, or start from zero with this year, whatever it may be. That's what we at the city for occupational license tax would follow.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? If none, we'll go ahead and wrap things up as the the timeline pointed out. Over the next couple of weeks, we want anyone who's on the Zoom call right now, or if you know someone else who wants to chime in and comment based on the report. I guess real quick, did everyone get the report that Miriam sent out? I take it that you all did. If you didn't, let us know. Those case studies were some that were provided, I think, by Liz Swain, as well as other people on the call, and then some we chose ourselves. We were just trying to get a broad stroke of different cities, sizes, unique characteristics moving forward. We'll use that as a base, as well as other data that we find along the way, and to create some of these subsections that Miriam has right now. We'll get those to you once they're written for comment, and then we'll give a couple of weeks to add feedback. We're looking at having our final Zoom public forum on was it June 9th, Miriam, but we'll give you all some drafts along the way. You can comment on those as well. And even between now and then, if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to myself or to Miriam, and we'll address those as quickly as possible. I want to thank everybody for attending. And as always, have a great day and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.